You start questioning yourself the moment they sound certain, even when you remember everything clearly. That is how gaslighting works, not by erasing facts but by poisoning your confidence first. Suddenly, the argument stops being about what happened and becomes about trusting your mind anymore. You replay conversations, reread messages, and still feel strangely guilty for things you never did. The painful part is not forgetfulness, it is watching certainty collapse under someone else's pressure. Most people think gaslighting is obvious, but the real version arrives quietly and looks ordinary. It sounds like correction, concern, confusion, or a harmless joke you supposedly took too personally. But the pattern is deliberate in its effect, because your self-trust is the real target. Once self-trust weakens, they need less evidence because your mind starts arguing against itself. That is why this feels so personal, so destabilizing, and so hard to explain afterward. You are not weak for hesitating, you were trained to distrust your own internal alarm. And the training often starts with tiny moments you almost feel embarrassed mentioning out loud. They say that never happened, even though you remember where you stood and what followed. They insist you misunderstood their tone, then punish you for reacting to the meaning anyway. They claim they were joking, but only after the cruelty lands and your face changes. They deny promises they clearly made, then call you demanding for remembering the agreement later. They act confused by your pain, as if your reaction appeared from nowhere without cause. That confusion matters because it forces you to defend reality instead of protecting yourself first. And once you start defending reality, they quietly step into the role of reasonable judge. This is the hidden move most people miss when they describe gaslighting too simply online. It is not only lying about facts, it is controlling which version feels emotionally safer. If challenging them brings shame, anger, silence, or mockery, your brain starts adapting fast too. You stop asking whether you are right, and start asking what will keep peace today. That shift looks small, but it changes your entire relationship with memory and instinct forever. Memory is not just storage, it is also confidence, context, and permission to trust yourself. Gaslighting attacks that permission until your clear recollection feels less valid than their performance somehow. And manipulators often perform certainty better than honest people because honesty leaves room for nuance. You remember details, but you also remember complexity, which makes you sound less absolute sometimes. They remember convenience, not accuracy, and deliver it with a tone that feels final enough. So you begin mistaking their certainty for truth when it is usually emotional force only. This is why intelligent people get trapped too, often faster than people already expecting manipulation. Your mind keeps searching for logic, while theirs keeps testing what they can rewrite next. You assume memory problems should feel dramatic, but gaslighting usually feels like low-grade fog. It arises after enough contradictions, enough blame, enough reversals, and enough false innocence from them. One day you catch yourself apologizing before speaking, expecting your memory will be challenged again. You soften your language, add disclaimers, and present facts like requests for approval from others. "Maybe I am wrong" becomes your opening line, even when you are absolutely right inside. That sentence sounds humble, but repeated enough, it trains your body to abandon itself first. Gaslighting does not need you to believe every lie. It only needs hesitation from you. Because hesitation buys them time, and time lets them shape the emotional meaning of events. Once meaning changes, facts start feeling less solid, even if the facts never changed at. Think about the cold text after warmth, acting like nothing intimate was ever said there. Or the coworker smiling in meetings, then privately claiming you imagined the earlier insult completely. Or the parent who rewrites childhood stories whenever your adult boundaries expose their behavior again. Or the partner who says you always twist things while twisting every word you say. None of this feels accidental when you step back, but inside it feels maddeningly slippery. That is because the trap is built through repetition, not one spectacular moment alone usually. Repetition matters because your nervous system learns patterns before your conscious mind names them clearly. So, even when you cannot explain why, you start feeling wrong before they say anything. Your body remembers the penalty for certainty, even if your mouth still reaches for truth. That is why gaslighting often creates physical symptoms long before people call it abuse openly. The headaches, the stomach tension, the racing thoughts, the sleepless replaying are not random either. They happen when your mind keeps checking itself because someone keeps moving the ground daily. And the cruelest part is that your self-doubt then becomes evidence against you too. They point to your confusion as proof you are confused, never mentioning who created it. They say, "See, you're emotional," after pushing you through days of distortion and quiet pressure. They say, "See, you never remember correctly," after rejecting every memory that threatened control before. This is where many people start blaming themselves for not staying calm enough under pressure. But confusion under manipulation is not character failure, it is a predictable human response instead. Anyone repeatedly told their reality is flawed will start double-checking their own mind eventually. The shame you feel is often borrowed shame, handed to you by someone avoiding theirs. Because admitting what they did would force them to face weakness, envy, or cruelty directly. So instead they export the confusion, and you end up carrying their psychological bill alone. If this has happened for months or years, your memory may feel fragmented now sometimes. That does not always mean your memory is bad, it may mean it was punished. When the cost of remembering correctly keeps rising, your brain sometimes chooses uncertainty for survival. That survival response can look like brain fog, self-interruption, or blanking during conflict suddenly. You know something happened, but the details scatter as soon as they challenge you hard. Then later, alone and calm, your memory returns with painful clarity about every missing detail. That delay can make you question yourself even more because truth arrives after pressure leaves. But delayed clarity happens when your nervous system is flooded, not because you imagined everything. The manipulator counts on the moment because the moment is where your clarity is weakest. They do not need to win later if they can make you fold now first. This is why arguing details rarely frees you, even when your facts are perfect anyway. A gaslighter does not want resolution, they want your focus, energy, and emotional labor instead. Every extra explanation gives them more material to twist, minimize, or turn against you later. Every long defense teaches them which words hurt you and which doubts work fastest next. Every emotional essay you send becomes another stage where they can play innocent with ease. So the common mistake is chasing confession, fairness, or closure from someone invested in confusion. You think more evidence will fix it, but evidence never outranks their need for control. You think one perfect sentence will finally make them understand, but they already understand enough. What they resist is not information, it is losing the position above your reality entirely. So your power shift starts when you stop trying to win inside their dishonest frame. You do not need to prove every fact to protect yourself from a pattern anymore. You only need to notice what repeatedly happens when truth enters the room with them. Do they clarify with respect, or do they distort, deflect, punish, and reverse blame again? Do they repair confusion, or do they use confusion to gain emotional advantage consistently? The answer to that question tells you more than any single disputed memory ever could. This is where calm boundaries become stronger than perfect explanations during manipulative conversations with them. Instead of proving everything, try naming the pattern and ending the performance early right there. You can say, "That is not what happened, and I am not debating it further." You can say, "I remember it differently, and I am done arguing details now." You can say, "You are allowed your version, and I am allowed mine too." These lines matter because they protect your frame without handing over more material away. Notice what they do next, because their reaction usually reveals the real agenda immediately. Healthy people may disagree, but they do not need your mind to collapse first before. Manipulative people often become angrier when you stay calm than when you argue back. That is because calm ends the game they were using your confusion to play with. Silence can help too, not as surrender, but as refusal to feed distortion anymore. Not every accusation deserves an answer, and not every conversation deserves your full availability either. Sometimes the strongest proof you trust yourself is ending the exchange before they exhaust you. Keep records if needed, especially with toxic coworkers, former partners, or manipulative relatives involved. Screenshots, notes, dates, and voice memos are not obsession when reality keeps getting rewritten around. Documentation is sometimes how you lend your nervous system the certainty it has lost temporarily. But do not confuse collecting proof with needing permission to believe yourself about what happened. Evidence can support you, but inner trust returns when your actions finally match your perception. That may mean shorter conversations, slower replies, or declining invitations that always leave you foggy. It may mean no longer explaining private pain to people who weaponize vulnerability later. It may mean refusing urgent discussions when you feel pressured, tired, or cornered already. Because pressure is rarely accidental in these dynamics, pressure is often part of the method. They want quick answers because quick answers are easier to distort than grounded ones later. They want instant resolution because your pause gives you access to yourself again fully. So take the pause, even if they call it cold, rude, or dramatic afterward. A simple "I will respond later" can save you from hours of manufactured confusion today. And when you revisit the moment later, notice which version still fits the full pattern. Your truth is usually the one that explains both the incident and the reaction afterward. Their story often explains only the incident, while conveniently hiding the control that followed afterward. That is the hidden way gaslighting distorts memory. It attacks context, not just facts alone. And once context is damaged, isolated moments become easy to reinterpret against yourself later. You remember the sentence, but forget the months of evading that made your reaction understandable. You remember your tone, but not the calculated indifference that pushed you there first. You remember snapping once, but not how often you swallowed disrespect to avoid conflict before. When context returns, shame starts loosening because your memory stops standing alone on trial there. You begin seeing not a series of personal failures, but a system of pressure instead. That recognition changes everything because you stop trying to become acceptable to distortion anymore. You stop treating every disagreement like a courtroom and start treating patterns like information instead. You stop begging people to validate what your body already learned in painful detail slowly. The noise drops, the fog thins, and your memory stops feeling like enemy territory inside. You may still forget small things because everyone does, and that is not the point. The point is whether someone consistently uses your normal humanity to seize psychological control there. Real safety does not require photographic memory. It requires relationships where truth can breathe freely. And if truth only survives when you stay silent, agreeable, or self-doubting, leave carefully. You do not owe endless access to anyone who keeps turning your mind against you. You do not owe warmth to someone who keeps using confusion to create false closeness. You owe yourself steadiness, distance, and the right to trust remembered reality again fully. So when the doubt rises next time, pause before assuming the problem is your memory. Ask instead what happened right before your certainty suddenly started feeling unsafe. That answer will often tell you more truth than the argument ever could alone.